The Florida Supreme Court slams its judicial gavel in the face of conservatives and lops 3 constitutional amendments, controversial ones, off the November ballot. Public education groups rejoice, but will there be payback? All of that on Power Play this week with our guests, Mike Vasalinda, Bureau Chief of Capitol News Service, and Bill Cotterell, political editor of the Tallahassee Democrat. Just a stunner, the Supreme Court flexing muscle like we haven't seen for a while, shoving 5, 7, and 9 off the ballot.
Unanimously.
Let's start overall with the breathtaking effect of that Power Play.
Well, I think what's interesting is that the legislature could have done all of this, and the court sort of came to that yesterday and decided the commission was way out of bounds on all 3 of them.
The Taxation and Budget Reform Commission, how far out of bounds were they?
Well, the Supreme Court was unanimous and quick in less than 4 hours. There was obviously, the court knew what it wanted to do. Barney Bishop suggested that the court probably had its mind made up and didn't hear anything that changed its mind in oral arguments, so we had a ruling before dinner.
Amendment 5 was the one that would have promised homeowners 25% reduction in property taxes by eliminating the required local effort for local education funding and leave it to the legislature to fill that hole. Is that the big flaw the court found in number 5?
Well, what they found was that there was no guarantee past year 1 of the implementation. The first year was fine, but that you know, the amendment was very clear. The equivalent state revenues. It didn't say for just 1 year, and that was what Peggy Quinn said from the bench, a Bush appointee with Lawton Chiles, I might add.
And the man who earned the title America's Lawyer back in the 2000 presidential election, Barry Richard, Florida's own, sitting there arguing against Amendment 5. He prevails again on a big stage.
Well, I was kidding Barry in the circuit court when Judge Cooper heard the case. I said the other side showed up. I thought they just surrendered. When you hired Barry Richard, I thought it was all over. And he wins again. And Ron Meyer, let's not forget, in the vouchers case. Meyer has now beaten the proponents of vouchers at every turn.
All right, so the lawyering on this, very important. How about the lawyering on the other side, on the losing side? Were they outmatched?
Well, Mark Herron is a very, very good lawyer, but I don't think that he thought he had a good case from the beginning. I think, you know, he did his best to argue what he had, but he didn't have much to argue. It was pretty clear on 5 that it was misleading.
You know, in an era when we're being told unions are losing clout and teacher unions in particular supposedly have lost ground, here's the Florida Education Association asserting itself, taking on these 2 amendments. They were against Amendment 5. What's it say about their power?
Well, they've always been a power in Florida politics and nationally. I think at the recent Democratic Convention, a large segment of the delegates came from organized labor and particularly the teachers' unions. And I think that on these constitutional issues, they'll continue to lose in the legislature like AFSCME does, and when they win, it'll be in court.
Well, the 7 justices on the Florida's Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, not all appointed by a Democratic governor, some appointed by former Governor Jeb Bush. Unanimous decision. How breathtaking is that?
Well, I think what was very breathtaking that all 7 of them said that on all 3 amendments. I thought there was going to be some discussion on the voucher amendment that would have come up. What really surprised me was that there was no meat to the opinions to tell us why, because Fred Lewis said yesterday, we really need to let people know what's acceptable and what's not, and what's misleading and what's not, and the court didn't do that.
Very quickly, any doubt that conservative voices that want tax dollars to go to vouchers and tuition for private and parochial schools are going to find a way to come back?
They'll be back in the legislative session. Of course, the legislature can do things the TBRC or the Constitutional Revision Commission cannot. The legislature could adopt a similar amendment, and I think there'll be a hard run at it, but there will be some resistance. There are a lot of members, including Republicans, who don't like treading in this area.
Let's go, gentlemen, to your respective Power Play of the week.
Fred Lewis.
Former Chief Justice.
Former Chief Justice. Mike mentioned in the oral arguments, Justice Lewis digressed for a moment and said these titles, we've got like the Religious Freedom Amendment, said it's becoming a game. We've got to start informing people what these amendments do and quit putting sugar-coated titles on them.
My second choice, because I like that one too, Sarah Palin. I mean, she hit a home run at the convention. If there was any doubt she couldn't be on the ticket because of her personal issues, she got rid of those.
One of the best public speakers we've seen on the political landscape in a long time. One other power play of the week, probably Ron Meyer and Barry Richard, the lawyers who took it to conservatives with their fights on 5, 7, and 9. Go to the Safety Review for the latest political news, and we'll see you next time on Power Play.